I live hand with my life. I stay strong, I stay wise. I live hand with my life. I stay strong, I stay wise. I live hand with my life. While we wait.
Hey, Patrice Bryant here. I am the host of While We Wait. Again, I am super excited. I'm probably the most excited I've ever been about this topic today and very, very passionate about it. I want to say greetings to you wherever you are on whatever coast, whatever time zone. Welcome to While We Wait. This is a platform to inspire, to motivate, and to empower. So you showed up the right place. This is a platform that you can enter your thoughts, your comments, your questions in the comment section, and we will bring you into the conversation. That's what this is. It is a conversation. And today I'm super excited because we will be talking about talent is never enough, and I have some childhood friends, some longtime friends with me, and there's a wealth of knowledge on this platform today. If you know any up and coming musicians, vocalists, or anybody that wants to evolve, you're feeling stuck, um, you just want more for your life, this is going to be a wonderfully principled discussion with some people that have been doing what they do for a very long time. They are multi-talented. So you want to like, like and share. Get the information out. Let somebody know right now that we are going live, or we are live. We're on. I want to say some thank yous first for all of those that came on last week for my online birthday broadcast. Thank you so very much. It was so wonderful to share my family and my life with you, my time with you. I appreciate all of the viewers that came on, everybody that gave me well wishes, those that called me and sang songs to me, those that put money in my Cash App, my friends that came and decorated the outside of my house and my car, my children who I absolutely adore, to Rosie, love of my life, to Julian Varner, wonderful friend of mine, for his greetings, Jerry Green, Simone Brown, Kwame, who sang that song Power. It's absolutely amazing. I love it. He's a rapper extraordinaire. And to everyone that came on, to my friend Marcy Thompson, who took me to a place outside to eat. I feel a little more safer being out in the open air. To my extended brother Ish, and my best friend Fadette McRae, who came, and to DJ Dave Chambers, who was my first cousin, who came on and played the music that I like. And I'm an Earth, Wind, and Fire kind of girl. Of course, I'm a gospel girl, but the elements get it for me all the time. I also want to share that on next week, I will have a returning guest, Miss Lisa Zaratni. And if you're feeling stuck, we will be talking about unstuck, how to get out of my own way. She has a podcast called Positively, let me get it right, Positively Living. And she's got a podcast on Spotify. You can go on there and listen to her podcast. She has some wonderful people up there who are giving lots of inspiration and motivation. So next week, right here on While We Wait, either on Facebook Live or on YouTube under R. Patrice Bryant, Lisa Zaratni will be back from Positively Living podcast. We'll be talking about unstuck, getting out of your own way. I have a special announcement. On Saturday, June 12th, I will be doing a marathon. If you remember growing up, for those that are old enough to remember, I think it was on like PBS, and they had those marathon and they were doing fundraisers. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing right here on While We Wait. I will be doing a fundraiser for two different organizations that do a lot of work in the community, as well as feed the hungry. Those food pantries have been absolutely amazing during this time of the pandemic. Some people were not able to really make it, or just made it from check to check, and they were able to go to these emergency pantries and get good food. Like there's one pantry that literally gives out shrimp. How do I know? So good food, you know, not the off brand, the real brand kind of food. So they were not slighted at all. So this is June 12th. There will be performances. I will have vendors on so you can purchase different items. So if you are a vendor or if you're a performer, you can certainly let me know, and I can let you know what it takes to be on this particular platform. I'm still working on my name, but I already have it locked in, and I'm getting my people together. June 12th, and it will be from noon to 4 p.m. It will be a 4-hour day with that, and we're just looking to do something wonderful in the community because people still need help. Yes, it is a great cause. How you doing, sir? Good to see you on. All right, so are you ready? I certainly am. I am. I've got 3 maestros and 2 sopranos. I'm one of them, so I've got another soprano with me, the real soprano. But we have, first of all, I'm going to go from, I'm going to bring people on according to how long I've known them. So the first person out the gate or in the gate will be my friend Colin Haywood. Colin, how you doing today, sir?
Great. How are you?
I am well. I'm well. Colin is from New Haven. I'm from New Haven. And as long as I can remember me, I can remember Colin. I had to be somewhere between 8 and 12. And I remember Colin, who was playing for my uncle's church in New Haven. And Colin is absolutely amazing. I'm so glad that he agreed to come on today. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm glad that you asked me. Honored to be here with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then in the same order, the next person that I've known for, I just, I can't remember years, but it is anyway, it's Dr. Michael Lloyd, who who I've known, it had to be like early teens.
Just date us, why don't you? Just go
I
ahead.
know,
Just
I
date
know,
all of us.
I know. But I love you though. I love you
Love
though.
you too, girlie.
Yes.
These guys have been absolutely
As,
amazing in my
as I
life.
pay homage to the bishop.
Here we go. Here we go. This whole platform is just fire. Like I don't have a word for it. Like this is it's so electric. So I'm really happy to have everyone that's on the platform today. And then the next one I would have known for at least 20 years. Oh my God. Oh my God. Would be my girl. Hey. That's the doctor, Tiffany Renee Jackson. That's my girl. I had to get her on with me because I didn't want to be left alone with the guys by myself. Let me bring a singer on or something, So I'm really happy, and Tiffany has come on and dropped bombs of wisdom, and we're just so grateful that she is back with us on today. So thank you, Tiffany.
Hey, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
And then we have Julian Varner. Boom. How you doing, sir?
I'm well. I'm well.
I'm
I'm
so
well.
glad you came on today. Julian is a friend of mine. Julian is a great listener. I can, I don't talk to a lot of people, but Julian has had to listen to me just vent, and he always has a wonderful word of wisdom, a word of knowledge, or encouragement. He has been there, but he's that guy as well. Another amazing talent and a gift. I won't even put one word on it because everyone up here does more than one thing, and they do it very, very, very well. So I'm very, very happy to have.
Honored to be here. Honored to be here.
So guys, let me do this. So Colin, I just want to talk about, and I don't even, I need to look real quick. The first thing out the gate, and these are just ideas that I spoke about, but just with longevity, and I've seen the sacrifice. You're the one that I've seen the sacrifice with. Um, Colin, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember well, would be at his father's church. I remember. Was it every Monday?
Yes.
Every Monday. I don't remember the amount of time, but if you wanted to learn, you could just go and sit and just glean. How long would you be there on a Monday, Colin?
Probably
Like
4 hours.
4 hours, yeah. And for how many years did you do that?
I mean, I would
It
have
was
to say long time. I mean, years. I didn't miss unless I was out of town. I was there every Monday.
I so remember, and um, this 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 particular topic today is talent is never enough, and I know a lot. I'm certain you do as well. There are a lot of very gifted, talented people. I have to say, Colin is one of the most disciplined players that I know. Not just in that rehearsal time, which he did, but there's that thing for a singer. And Tiff, I know you can you feel me on this as well. The music is what accompanies the singer that runs us over.
Shots fired. Okay.
Man down, fire in the hole. But I have to say that, and this is not all about music. A lot of this is going to be about principle, but I have to go here because that is one of the greatest things, is to have an understanding of the singer is the expression, and the music is what they can rest on, they can lay on, they should be able to. That's the canvas. And I just had to say that because I remember, I so remember. And then for Mike, I remember I didn't have driver's license yet, so I had to get someone to drive me to Bridgeport because I lived in Hamden.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted to go sit in wherever he was playing so I could hear, because he was that guy. So, you can get where you want to get if you got some friends with driver's license. So,
Yeah, that's true.
so he was that guy. He was that guy. And so these are two of my dearest friends, Colin and Mike. And then Tiffany actually, I want to say, she nursed me back to life vocally. Because, and I say this for every singer, especially gospel singers, and if you sing the kind of music that you need a Band-Aid on your throat when you finish, if you're not singing correctly. So with Tiffany, because I was singing and preaching so much and I was having issues with my vocals, she actually gave me therapy to get myself back together. And I don't lose my voice anymore because I learned how to protect it because of Tiff. And if I'm growling, I learned how to do it properly, because one thing about Tiffany is Tiffany watches what I do on Facebook and comments. So, you don't want to get that spank. And I don't know anybody that can say my name like her, Rashida. Okay. So just amazing. The learning to know how and this is all based on the talent. You are talented. You can just sing. You can just play. Whatever, you're an artist. You draw. You're an articulate speaker. You're eloquent in speech. All of that is wonderful, but it's still not enough. Julian Varner is one of the most generous. Anything he has, musically and otherwise, I'm sure. I haven't asked to borrow any money. I don't think that I have it to borrow. Like, I really want to have my own, so you don't have to worry about that if I can help it with a friend. But he is one of the most kindest and most generous and very talented. I remember a song came up and I started singing it and he started playing. I was like, "Yep, that's it." So just a wealth. And all of you have been doing what you're doing, and me too, for a very long time. Now I know Varner's been playing and is classically trained since he was 4 years old. That's when he started his lessons. I've been singing since I was 14 months, because you would have to know my grandmother, who would make me stand up with the choir. Colin, right? My grandmother. And I had a robe. I look at my grandbaby, she's about to be 2, and I'm like, that's little to have a robe. I had a robe, guys. I did. I had a robe. So anyway, let's get into it. So just something. Hey. Brian Dennis, thank you for being on. Colin, you've got Brian Dennis is saying hello to you.
Hey, Brian.
And Beverly, thank you for coming on. I'm so happy to see you today. So let's get into it. So you're gifted, so you're talented, so you have great ability. Let's talk about professionalism. Um, what are your thoughts on that, or what do you have to say about that? Because you can be all of that. We've seen that, and but you have the wrong attitude, or just talk to us, and anybody can jump out there. It's okay if we bump into each other, but talk about that element of professionalism. What's up with that?
Mm.
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 Again. If you want to make it a fourth? Yeah, all right.
I think that it's something that unless people have been exposed to it, in training and in growing up, you really don't learn it unless you really have some exposure to others who are professional. Once you get a taste of a good steak,
Yeah.
bad steak.
Immediately.
Once you get a taste of something that's good, anything else won't satisfy that longing. So unfortunately, sometimes in the church setting, because although I grew up in church, I didn't learn music from church.
Okay.
And so sometimes in the church setting, when I did actually start playing in church, there were a lot of things that were not professional in that sense and in that regard. So, and not to, draw any judgments or anybody, I just realized that unless people are exposed to a level of professionalism, then, it's difficult to kind of adjust to it, and unless you can have someone as a mentor, which I wish I would have known about those Monday nights there with your brother there. I would have come at some point in the morning. So I think it comes with exposure and even yearning for it. You'll find it if you want it. You'll find it if you want it.
So
Yeah.
I go ahead, Tiff. Go ahead.
I want to speak to this. So when I think about professionalism, I think of a number of things. I don't just think about a person's behavior. I actually think about how they're actually performing. You know what I mean? Like the actual performance, which really can say a lot about an individual, the way they're performing. You can tell if they planned their performance. You can tell if they thought about how they want to express themselves. And I think when it comes to the church, a lot of times we wait for the Spirit to hit us. And that's beautiful. But I think sometimes, because it is performative in nature, anytime you're up in front of a crowd of people, you are performing. You are, whether if the content is uplifting, that's fabulous, but it's still a public display of professionalism. So for me, the way a person rolls out their entire performance, to me, is where professionalism, where a conversation can begin about that. So case in point, what is your presentation?
Good.
How are you put together with what you have on? That's one thing. The other thing could be, how are you relating to who is accompanying you, right? How can we relate to the person who is accompanying? So although the accompanist is sort of like the background for the singing, but it also can be a conversation. See, I don't see accompaniment as it just being a support for singers. I see it as it being a communication between two artists.
That's good.
Right. And I learned this in the classical field because there is to a certain extent, there is something that's very equal in a classical sense between what the singer is doing and what the orchestra is playing. It's sort of like we need one another. So professionalism can also mean being aware of who is playing for you, that they aren't a machine, and to show that respect and regard for who's playing for you. Another aspect of it could be, are we being competitive?
Yikes.
Right? Right, brothers. So then that's another aspect of it. Like, it shouldn't be competitive to that. Because I've been in church sometimes, even at funerals, where I'll get up and sing, and then I can tell the next person feels like they got to get up and like
I'll sing you.
Right. And then what they end up doing is screaming and shouting and screaming their throats bloody. So then I'm like, why did they do that? You know what I mean? Because that's not why I'm at this funeral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just want to interject that professionalism is not just an attitude.
Okay.
It's your product and how you roll it out.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
good. So you said something, you talked about from, outside of church, or your being classically trained. And again, this goes to everyone. Let's talk about training. And so training is, of course, whatever you're learning, but training is so much more deeper than that, because even I find that even though I am taking lessons, I'm still working to be mentored. And then you have to be what is called teachable.
Mhm.
And then before we came on, we talked about what can be taught, and then some things are caught. So let's just talk about that, about training, because that training is going to bring about that discipline.
Right. What's interesting, I heard the Bishop Haywood. I'm gonna tease you all evening, bro. No, he talked about how every Monday he was at the church. My story is I wasn't necessarily trained in my early days of playing organ, but there was a mandate on me. My father, and Treese knows this. Our church is on Stratford Avenue. My dad bought a B2, wasn't a B3, but a B2 from this old Caucasian lady in Greenwich. And I remember getting in on the van, going to get this big, huge organ and this big, huge Leslie. And I was playing piano and pretty good. And I moved over to organ and it was terrible. I mean, it was so bad that the deacons would take all of the electrical cords off on Sunday. My dad would make me go put it back.
Wow.
And so my daily regimen was my father would drive me to the church when I got out of school. I got out of school at 2:30 out of Bridgeport Public School System. Drive me over to the church, open the door, and lock me in.
You gonna learn. You gonna learn.
You're going to learn today.
And here was his words to me before he would leave the church. My father would say to me, son, if you're going to play for me, you got to be good.
Wow.
And I was there 2 and 3 hours a day. And so when I think of professionalism, I think of being prepared and being disciplined. Whether it's self-study, and after I left in 92, I moved to Dallas and actually started taking some formal classes at a local community college. And I never forget her, this little short French lady who was a piano teacher, who she taught me this drill. You put 2 quarters on the back of your wrist and you play scales double octave, and the quarter better not fall. And so, and then when I got to LA, that was the roughest transition for me, but I made it because I started playing with the great Andrew Goucher. And everybody knows him. He was all the bass player in all them Hawkins records.
Oh, yeah.
Playing with him was like university boot camp. And so surrounding yourself with people who are already at that level. They might talk to you rough. They might get on you every now and then. But I never forget it. One time I was all in my feelings, and Goucher said to me, he said, Mike, if you couldn't play, you wouldn't be here. So don't take it personal. And so sometimes you have to get with people who are going to make you better without being bitter. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to concede the floor to the rest of these brilliant panelists. There was a text in one of the, I want to say it's in one of the Chronicles, story of Balaam. And I'm going to cut to the end of the story to make my point. The text says that God spoke to him through his donkey, his animal. And here's my point. God only spoke through an ass once. He ain't doing that no more. The rest of us got to be prepared.
Wow. 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 All right. Um, how important and please, if even if I ask a question, if you had a thought about what was already said, I so I have attempted to learn to read notes
Yes.
several times when I was younger.
Mhm.
Um, Either I didn't have the correct teacher for me,
Wow.
or my ear just kept getting in the way. I could not, for whatever reason. I now on this end of it, I'm getting it. I don't know if it's because I don't know, but I find, and I'm certain you guys know this, but I'm find that educating myself, even though I play by ear, but that theory, and I found that out this past weekend really good. That theory will assist you tremendously um, with playing. So let's talk about the training, the education, or how important do you believe it is to go beyond? Well, if you're a gospel player, or how yeah, how important is it, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
When I it's a good question. I went off to in high school. I was always singing, sight reading, chorus, you know, in our chorus in high school, and it was an interesting, that was my training ground there in terms of being able to sight read and sing uh, the notes that you see on the paper.
Mhm.
But then when I went off to college, and started getting more into that, which I minored in music, um, and I may as well have majored because there was a professor there, a black gentleman who was a part of the Fifth Jubilee Singers,
Wow.
and he was actually the only black professor of music at the school.
Mm.
And when I started taking classes, he like latched on to me and said to me that as I studied, I want to give back to you. And
Wow.
that was very emotional for me. And at that point, I mean, if I had issues with anything in terms of the because you have to, it's a transition. I mean, you're playing in church, and everything is like um, off the cuff, basically. Somebody gets up and sings testimony service, and they jump up and they start singing. So you'll start playing what they're
Yes,
saying.
sir. Yes, sir.
Listen.
And for me, that was a great training ground because
That's
one
true.
of the things you learn how to play in every key. If you didn't, and we didn't have all this transposing and
Transposing. Hmm.
none of that stuff. You had to play. It was a piano and organ, and those organs then the pianos were no transposing. and so, and at the time, I didn't teach the songs in the choir. I was learning. I was playing. And so, if the song wasn't in a key that was comfortable for me, I had to spend the time to make sure and that I learned it. And by doing that, along with the devotional service, it taught you how to play, made you train and work on how to play in all the. So when I got to college, and I was taking music there, it was the training. And you talk about the professionalism. I watch. It's for me, professionalism is a way of life.
Mhm.
If you're going to be in this thing, you have to be what you're trying to accomplish. And you can't try to accomplish something and not be that or work towards that because
Mhm.
you'll never get there. And people want to play, but they don't want to spend the time.
Right. Right.
That's good. That's
And,
good.
and I
Right.
have a nephew says to me, he's down in South Carolina, my sister said she wanted me to teach her grandson. And I said, well, all right, I'm on the, so of course I was doing it through Zoom.
Hmm.
And he had his little keyboard, and he's a young teen, but they have no structure. And so now they have got into this thing, that number system, one,
Yeah.
three,
Yeah.
five, two.
Yeah.
And I asked them, what is that? I want you to explain to me what you're saying.
Hmm.
Because if you can't explain it, then you don't know what you're doing.
Hmm.
Wow.
You're going off of something that someone told you. You don't understand what that's all about,
Hmm.
and its roots. So he wants to play and transpose, and I said, no. If I'm going to teach you, then you can't transpose.
No transposing.
because that's going all it's going to do is cripple you, and that's going to hinder you from getting to that professional place.
That's true. That's true.
Absolutely.
The growth, it'll stifle your growth. So I think that's why it's a way of life. So everything that you're trying to become, you have to embrace that. When it comes to being professional or shooting for that professionalism, because if you talk to anybody that's there, it didn't happen overnight.
Sure.
Mm-mm.
Sure.
Yeah, I would love to speak to what brother is saying. Oh my goodness.
Speak to it. Speak to it.
First of all, professionalism is a way of life. I love that. I just put that in my phone because that's exactly it, you know. But so when I was younger, you know, I grew up in the church, you know, storefront, foot stomping. Maybe we had an organ, but we mostly had tambourines and our feet in our hands, right? But simultaneously, my mother started to get voice lessons for me at neighborhood music school in New Haven. Now, my mom also sent me to places like St. Peter's Parochial School. And I would be a little bit, you know, sort of like, why am I going to Catholic school? I'm Pentecostal. Like, I don't want to learn about the Stations of the Cross and penance and all that. Like, what is it?
Right.
But my mom said to me, listen, education is that which you don't know, right? And so I want you to become well-versed outside of your own cultural experiences, because we live in a world where the more diverse you can be, the more successful you can be, or whatever and however we define success, right? So I went to Catholic school, I went to neighborhood music school, to ECA, and I started combining sort of those indigenous musics that I grew up in with what I was learning from more Eurocentric traditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I combined those two things, and what it did was it opened up a world of possibilities. So it depends on how far people want to go. Like if you want to sing at the Apollo Theater and then also maybe aspire to sing at the Metropolitan Opera and then maybe also aspire to sing on Broadway, then you have to have that versatility in terms of your perspectives, your musical perspectives, right? So, and the last point I wanted to make, I wrote down a couple of things because the comments are just so fantastic. There are different types of knowledge. The one thing that I reject is when people, and it happens a lot in universities, right? When they try to elevate Eurocentrism above indigenous or Black music.
Wow.
See, that we're not having, right?
Wow.
So I just want to put that out there because as an opera singer, it was really tough for me being able to operate in white spaces and be my whole Black self and still sing Mozart. Like, how do I do that? How can I still be Tiffany Jackson from the hood in New Haven and bring all of her to the operatic stage, right? That was very challenging, in part because of racism, in part because, you know, I had to struggle to belong in a world that did not openly accept me as a Black woman singing classical music. But this is the thing. Eurocentrism is centered in universities. So if you don't read music, if you don't learn, you know, about the dead white composers like Beethoven, Mozart, and Haydn, then you're not a legit musician.
Right. Yeah.
I reject. Wholeheartedly reject.
Wholeheartedly, I'm with you.
To think that that's what we're saying. No. Blackness is a certain type of knowledge, and indigenous knowledge.
Thank you.
Knowledge and legitimate knowledge.
Thank you. That's good.
But if you want to operate in white spaces, as most of us have to in some cases, then we got to learn how to speak that language too, right? And that's what I've learned how to do. I've learned how to speak different languages, literally and figuratively. I don't want to be limited.
Right.
And that just comes from my mother just saying, okay, yeah, we live here where we live, and that's beautiful. But I want you to learn other cultures because we live in a world that is not Black. We live in a world where we got to learn how to survive in different spaces. And so I wanted to put that out there because right now, as a person who is a social justice advocate in music, I'm constantly saying to these groups and colleges that I'm speaking to, you know, Blackness is partially why we even have a musical landscape in this country, period.
Come on.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to center whiteness in curriculums in school and think that we're going to be able to eradicate something like racism. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's very important that we do not elevate one music's above another.
Thank you for that, Dr. Tibbs.
Oh,
Bonner, you were
That's
chiming
awesome.
in. Go ahead, Bonner. Chime
That's
in.
awesome because while I was at Nyack College School of Music, I remember when I came in, they would always have comments about gospel music, and people that sing gospel music are not singing right and they're stripping their throats. And I said, well, who have y'all been around
What
listening
about
to?
what
Because
about
I
the
know,
rock music?
gospel
Rock
singers
music?
that have been singing for years and their voices are still pristine. So everybody's not screaming and hollering and then needing to shut down after years of singing. We had trained people growing up, and whether they were trained classically or not or professional, but we had people who sang correctly.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And so while I stood against that too, I like what you said. I totally rejected. So I became sort of like a rebel in college, against being told gospel singing was incorrect way to sing. And so I had taken a break. But when I came back, I noticed that they changed the curriculum. And now they offered gospel music as a study and as a curriculum, and they offer a degree in it now.
Yeah.
College. So I'm with you. They will change the curriculum if you step up and say something, and then different people will come in and speak to it. And they did. So I'm glad I was a part to see that happening, because I was like, I don't know where y'all and who y'all are listening to. And because I mean, we got singers who've been singing for years. And matter of fact, when you look in the industry, where they used to go to find the talent that they found was to the church.
Absolutely.
And if you want to really talk about it, all right. So I agree with you, Doctor. I totally reject it. And there's a
yes, bro.
that I reject as well with regard to education, because sometimes education can be indoctrination.
Exactly.
And if you don't have a strong mind, even to take the information, we got to know how to eat the meat and throw out the bones.
That's it, bro.
So even if you go to seminary and all of those type of things, it's good, eat the meat, but reject the indoctrination. Eat the information, do what you got to do, get the information to empower yourself. And whether you're in school formally or not, you can always learn. We got libraries at our fingertips now. We don't have to go get who still got a library card? You got one in your pocket? We got these devices. You understand? So it's what you choose to spend your time looking up and seeing. That you will be empowered. That all those books my brother got behind him, right? We have them right here. Thank God we ain't got what I mean? Yeah.
The American ideal, right? And it is totally American, is individualism, meritocracy, individual success, which is not Blackness. Black folks are about community, right? So this is why it's important to know the knowledge, so you'll even know what to reject too, because a lot of times when it comes to professionalism, we have to know how to rightly divide those things. And so if you don't have that exposure even to the trash, sometimes you don't know it's trash. So that's why I always would put myself in spaces where I'm like, okay, let me see what this is all about over here. Let me see. Okay, no, that's not for me, right? So I reject even what America tells us is meritocracy. It's based on how well you do individually and how you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And as Black folks, we know community is who we are.
Right.
Our brother is our keeper. I mean, that's Bible. So we reject some of the Americanisms and things because who we are as a people is sort of antithetical to some of those ideas. So can you imagine have a system that's about meritocracy? And so then those people who have access are going to be the ones who are going to have, the success. If that's what we ascribe to, right? So I reject that as well. And so in place of that, we have to build our own system of values and morals. We gotta, right, preacher, we gotta put that stuff out from God's perspective. We gotta put our own and educate our own people, the way the minister said, his father said, I'm gonna lock you in this church. I don't know who you're gonna
You're
talk
gonna learn tonight.
to. Learn tonight.
He did. He did.
But it's
You gonna
amazing.
Mhm.
And I think at least hearing this conversation, one thing I'm gathering and garnering from it is for us to be professionals, particularly those of us who have mainstream gospel music all of our lives.
Mhm.
Is we're going to have to study other genres. We're going to have to. It is a must.
That's like without question.
I'm sorry.
That's like without question.
It will only
Now,
enhance
for us, it is. For us, it is. And I'm not trying to create
good.
a generational gap fight based. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But okay, let's talk about the pink elephant in the windows, because I believe all of us here are over 40 at least. I'm gonna say that.
Oh yeah.
32. I'm holding it. 32.
You know what?
I'm not gonna tell y'all if she's saying she's 32, then
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
You 25 then too.
Reverend Sister Brian, I know your birthday. Anyway, you know, the thing is, because we didn't have YouTube when we were coming up.
right.
We didn't have social media. It wasn't. We sat down with them records.
That's right.
We sat down with them cassettes.
Look, rewind.
Wound that thing 15 times to learn one.
Rewind.
That's
And then
right.
if you couldn't get it, you would say, Colin, can you show me this?
Yeah. Or you went out, hung out at people's rehearsals. Again,
Yes.
you know, the reason why I'm so endeared to Brother Colin, because we were playing for the same guy. And I guess it was just my shift to play for him. But Colin would every night would come out rehearsal, and I would just stand there and look like Scooby-Doo. Roll. You know what I'm saying? But the culture shock for me was when I moved to Dallas in '92. A dear sweet lady there put me in a local community college to learn theory.
Talk about it, sir.
Nightmare for me, because like you all said, I was all these.
All ears.
I be struggling trying to read bar 1, but I can hear bar 7. Right? And so the band teacher one day, he figured it out. This cat ain't reading at all.
Like drumline.
He's not reading. He's not
That's
reading.
it.
Exactly. Like drumline. And so I'm just, because I knew where the chords were going. Why? And here's another thing. At the risk of you know, and it goes back to what Dr. Tiff said, indigenous. This stuff is indigenous. We have this natural feel. And dare I say, back in times of slavery, we sounded natural.
Yes.
That's what we couldn't do but so much to us.
Yes.
To a great degree, had to have us, because we had this natural inclination to giftedness.
That's
Yeah.
true.
It flowed through our pores. No matter how much you suppressed us, how much you oppressed us, God was kind enough to keep his hand on us.
Yes.
You're not going to beat my song out of me. And you know you're still trying. You're not going to do it. We're not going to let you. Right.
Never.
And so, you know, I had this natural thing, because even though I couldn't play jazz, I listened to it night and day. Right.
Yeah.
And so, because it sounded so much like gospel to me. So I was able to fuse the two together. Well, bless his heart, I will owe a great part of my development to a guy named Mr. Curtis Bradshaw, who was a long-haired hippie Caucasian guy who was cool as he wanted to do. He was like the last bebop jazz guy left in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
So here's what he would do. When he figured out I wasn't reading, I remember one time we were playing a tune called Joy Spring by Clint Brown, who was a fabulous Clifford Brown, a fabulous jazz trumpet player. So I'm sitting there. I figured out how to read chord charts. I couldn't read the lead lines. One day in the middle of class, he stopped the band cold. Boom, Lloyd, play the horn part.
Oh.
I just looked at him and laughed. I said, man, I said, come on, man. Come on, man. You know, I can't. Come on, man. Come on, Kurt. You know I can't read this. Lloyd, play the horn part. And there's black dots all over the page. He came over to the piano, right? He took the music off the stand and shoved it in my face. And this was on a Friday. He said, you take this piece home and you better have it learned by Monday.
Man.
After class, I was due to get on a plane with my fantastic gospel organ playing self, go to a buddy of mine down in Oklahoma City for a weekend workshop. I was going to kill him all weekend because here comes Mike Lloyd. Yeah, let's go. I got this. I felt so bad. Y'all, when he picked me up at the airport, I said, hey, man, send me one of your keyboards and don't nobody bother me. I got to learn this tune. If I don't, I'm going to flunk. And he pushed me to learn to read those horn parts and play them on piano. Another thing he did, and here's going to stop. I remember one time we was playing, right? And this is bebop jazz, which is my second. I have 2 records out in jazz. I just love jazz to death. He came over and whispered in my ears, Lloyd, we just playing. Quit playing them church chords in my class. I mean, this kind of stuff, if you decide to cross-pollinate genres, there's going to be somebody who, while they might acknowledge your natural gift, they're not going to admire it to the degree where they're not going to kick you in your behind.
Exactly. I have to say that Dr. Tiff was that for me. Because, you know, we come up and, you know, singers with the the running, and she was like, Rashida.
Why can I hear you say that in my head even though I just messed you?
You know, and she was like, you don't have to overcolor. She said, it's already beautiful. You don't have to add that to it. You know, so she taught me to be this, but I was open. You have to be open. You know, a lot of people can't accept, you know, and a coach, a counselor is not there for you to, you know, be lovey-dovey, woozy-coosy. It can make you mad.
Right.
You know, you have to be open if you want to learn. Okay, okay, you know, just okay, and then you get it. But that she was that for me.
Thank you, love.
You know,
discipline is also exercising a bit of restraint. You know what I mean? That's part of what discipline is. You can't have everything. But you have to have good enough taste to know and sensibility like what will work, right? Because I want to go back to something really quickly. Part of the reason why Black music became commodified and a commodity is when Black folks were freed after the emancipation, the blues left the plantations, okay? And it went up north, right, Doc? And so what had happened was when our music started to disseminate around the world, the only way we could still own it, we had to learn how to read. Because read those contracts, because of what happened to Bessie Smith and all different people who were great performers, but not reading the contracts, not able to understand that other side of it, right? So once our music became a commodity and a business, then it had to become more than just our talent. Like you said, you know, talent is not enough. Well, this I want to speak directly to this piece where talent is not enough. If you want to own your masters, like Prince Rogers Nelson said, if you don't own your masters, your master owns you. Okay? So this is why it is important to have to adhere a bit to cross-pollination, as Doc said, right? Even when it comes to how you conduct your business, because when people like Sam Cooke demanded, you know, his masters and all that, we all, you know, his death is pretty suspicious over this, right? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this has been very difficult for people, for Black folks over the years to own their music. So the more we learned how to read and how to interpret a contract, right? And how to distribute our own music and how to become owners and have complete autonomy over our stuff, it meant being more than gifted. It meant being more than doing things based on talent. It meant doing things based on more than what we were seeing. We had to go much deeper. Otherwise, things were being stolen from us. Our music is being stolen. And it's being stolen as we speak.
Absolutely.
So much of our music is being stolen. And even now, what we have to be careful of, and definitely in my industry, they have something they call CCM, commercial and contemporary music. It's Black music. Come on, y'all. You can call it CCM. You can give it a fancy acronym. That's fine. But musical theater is based in vaudeville. Okay.
Which is
When
us.
it comes to rock and roll, it's based in the blues.
Fast blues.
Okay. So all of these things that they call CCM and gospel and all that, it's really Black music. So what's happened now is that our music has been packaged, given an acronym and a name, which is fine. And there's a whole vocal pedagogy centered around it. And now they have programs throughout the country where they teach CCM. And guess who's not teaching CCM?
We.
Mm-hmm.
Us. We're not teaching CCM, right? So this is why it's important for us to have full autonomy, which means that sometimes we might have to go and figure out, okay, let me just learn how to just read the treble clef,
Come
because
on.
let me just go and just learn how to just play 1 4 5 1. Like, I don't have to play all the other stuff. I don't got to learn to play applied chords and do all this other stuff. I just need the basic stuff. Let's get basic. And we need more of that in our churches, I
We
believe,
do.
especially in churches in communities and inner cities. Now, some of these
Mhm.
mega churches, they have all the best musicians there. They have people like us there. But sometimes in the church I grew up in, I didn't have that. My mother had to outsource
Mm.
for me to get that.
Mm.
So my dream is for us to offer that to our kids in the church house.
I want to make a comment, and then we have a comment. I believe one of the groups that shows us a diversity of styles with their singers is Anthony Brown and Group Therapy,
Mm.
because there is one young lady who actually sings opera. Like, there's one song they incorporate John Legend's "All of Me" with a gospel song, and they go in and out of songs, so it's a medley of music. But
Wow.
every singer has their own style, and I just think that
Mhm.
it's a wonderful display of the beauty of genres of music, and what can happen if you get training. And we have to educate ourselves. God is not ignorant, and what we do is a display, of Him. Because some people can't see God; they're only seeing us. We
Right.
are that epistle.
Right.
There's a question here, but I want to set it up before I ask the question. I'm not certain if you all watched Versus, the last one with Earth, Wind, and Fire and the Isley Brothers.
I saw it.
I have to say that I got to tell you what, I'm in love with old school, and not just the music, but I looked at the collaboration between the two groups. And I'm saying that because there can be so many different riffs between musicians, between singers. And I just looked at the collaboration between the two. There was a genuine cohesiveness between the two.
In
So,
respect, yeah.
their music is, yeah, that respect is so amazing. So anyway, that brings me to this comment. It says, "Do you believe that there's any room for super egos at the professional levels of entertainment?"
Well,
Yes,
can
sir.
I
Talk
jump in
about it.
there? Ray?
Please,
Can
again, that's why
one
you
of the
here.
yes, I think the ego part. There's no room for that, but people take it and they own. If they really understood what they're doing to themselves with the ego, there are people that will not work with you because of your ego.
Thank you,
Uh,
sir.
Come on,
there are
sir.
people that they've lost gigs as a result of their ego
Mm.
because no one wants to work with them. And I had a situation that happened with me. I'm at a session, and I said to someone, "Let's go back to the intro to set up the vamp." And they said to me, "Why?" Now I wrote the song.
You see what I'm saying?
This is about to be
That's
good.
all. You just
This is
wrote
about
it.
to be good.
That's all. You just wrote it. You don't know.
I'm saying, let's go. That feels better going back to that. And they asked me why. And so uh, the director said, "I like the idea. Let's go with it." And he went and sat down and shut that down. And I think because of when people are not comfortable in their own skin and think someone is trying to take their place or feel that they can't listen or learn from somebody else, then that's where the ego, they want that ego comes to the forefront. And a way of a mechanism of saying that no, this is it's not this. I'm in charge here, not you. And I think that's a situation that I witnessed on a set, rehearsing for a live recording, and they didn't select my song in the first place. So now that lets you know that people deal with their egos. I think that once we become comfortable, with themselves, there's no room for ego, because first of all, no one person has everything.
Come on, sir.
God didn't give it to me. He didn't give it to anybody on this, but we can all, you talk about cross-pollination, we can all learn from each.
From one another.
I mean, because if that was the case, I say this to a lot of my students. I said, if all music was sounded the same, it would be boring, wouldn't it? If there was no other type of genres in the world but just one, it would be a boring situation. I mean, even a lot of my friends, I had to pull them into, when I was in high school, I was listening to Singers Unlimited. They were an a cappella group that did jazz.
Yeah.
And I was listening to that from ninth grade, and I was introduced to that. And for me, it was introducing me to another form or way of putting your chords together versus the traditional gospel way. You hear the three triads and that sort of thing. But now you're hearing all these colors, and not only that, as you talked about classical, it all has its place in your development. Give you case in point, the church that I started playing for forced me. I know how to read and all that stuff, but you in a church that don't have hymn books and they don't put them on Sunday. So now you don't read, unless you do it on your own. But you don't read. You don't pick up the hymn book and do it on a regular basis. So when I went to this church, I had to audition or sit down for an interview, not knowing. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Somebody gave me my name, Lewis Gibson. You know
yes,
him.
Sir.
So he gave them my name, and I go to sit down, and they started saying, "Okay." They went down and they were in the process of building a new church. So they were in a school, but the meeting took place in the parsonage, parsonage, but then they went down in the basement, and they had this little keyboard and a little lamp. They turned it on, and they said, "Here's the hymn book. Can we turn the page so and so and so and so?" So I turned to that page, and they wanted to start singing. Now these are the directors and the choir president. Now they sang in his choir, which they did anthems and hymns, all the classical stuff, the anthems and the hymns of the church. They did that, and now here I am going to be play for the gospel choir, but they wanted to know if I could play what was in the hymn book. So they started throwing out numbers, and I'm trying to play in this little half a keyboard. You're used to playing on the full 88 key or on the organ. They didn't have no organ. They had a little keyboard, and I'm trying to play, and I'm trying to look at it. So then they said, "Wow, okay." And finally, when I came back, they came upstairs. They said, "Well, there's a lady, never get her name, Dorothy Watson, and she was thoroughly trained to read music. I mean, she came from a big church in Mount Vernon, so she was." And she was playing for the women's choir at the church. So they're sitting there at the table, and she's saying to me, "Okay, I hear you. Your name, I know you, but you don't know me." "You know me? I don't know you, lady." I was there myself. I don't know who you are. And she says, someone had told her about me and said that it was like 3 or 4 years prior to me even coming to that church. I wasn't even on the radar screen in terms of going to that church. And I got there to the church, and I ended up started. And she says, "They told me about you." I don't, so when she told me who it was, I knew that she was telling the truth, because this person I met on a set, and we ended up becoming friends from that point. But let me get back to the point: is that it forces you to do what you know you have inside of you. So at this church, I don't pick the hymns; the pastor picked the hymn.
Ooh. And they're the worst critics.
And he's an older gentleman, so he went into the hymn book, the hymnal. I'm not talking about the African American heritage hymn. I'm not talking about that one. All right, he went into the hymnal. They had hymnals from the Methodist church. They had hymnals from the Baptist church. I mean, they had different hymnals in the church. So he would pick a hymn and say, "This is the hymn for the month." Well, who played on the first Sunday at 8 o'clock service? I did. So that meant I'm the first one that's going to handle this hymn at the first service on Sunday morning, and the choir is going to be singing. Now that meant I need to know what I was doing.
Oh,
So
yes.
so it forces you to do what you know that you know how to read, but now you got to get there and just begin to continue to do it. So from that point, I've been at this church about 24 years now.
Wow. Wow.
And it has challenged me, and that's the other part of music. If it doesn't challenge you, then it's not working. I mean, it doesn't challenge you. It doesn't challenge your ability. Then you'll be comfortable where you are, and you'll never grow. And so I had to learn that coming from a Pentecostal church, Kojic, you know, we did a hymn in the morning, but they didn't have no hymn books, no hymnals in the pews. So they just pick a hymn.
And we didn't necessarily sing all of the verses.
Right. You know, and so you didn't know to sit down and say, okay, what key is that song in? They just start singing it. Now to be able to then open up a hymn book and say, okay, that song is in B flat or A flat or A or E. You're reading it for the first time and becoming acquainted to A. Now, I'll tell you this, I'm gonna shut up. There was a church mother named Mother Hope. You probably remember Mother Hope.
I know Mother Hope. I knew Mother Hope.
Mother Hope was a walking hymnal. When I tell you, she was a walk from the. I mean, she knew. She came to me and said, "Son, now here I am. I was like 14. Son, I said, yes, ma'am. Give me the three trumpets. The trumpets. I said, what trumpet? I don't know what you're talking about. She was getting ready to sing God of Our Father. And in the beginning, and she wanted that. I didn't know what she was talking about.
Give me the trumpet.
But right, she wanted that intro, and it had to be. And so now, when I kept saying that, so when I find that, I said, let me go out and try to figure this out. And I found a book, and I was like, oh, this is what that is. I see it in the beginning, and goes into God, and she knew every verse. Yes, yeah, right, exactly. And I said, oh my God. But that was the only person that was singing stuff like that, but not in the church. Our church was like, that Pentecostal thing.
Yeah, we're going in.
Yeah, exactly. But she was that kind of person that she was kind of leading me, and I didn't know it at the time. But see, when you look back over your life and you see things that happened and you weren't resistant to it, it blessed your life to get to where you are, to the next level. And that's why you didn't resist it. And it made you, and it forced me to just, okay, I went down and started learning with a guy, studying with a professor at Yale. And he said to me, you're good, but you're not as good as you think you are.
Ooh.
And I was like, I don't think I'm good. I said, I don't think I'm good. But and I was like 14. I was playing in church, starting to learn how to read and all that stuff, but I wasn't there, but I was humble enough to say, okay, I want to know what are you talking about? And we studied for about a year and a half, and then he went on, he started touring. He was a concert pianist and started touring through Europe. And I missed that man, but he taught me a lesson along with all of those that came before me. When you talk about playing for vocalists and all, being sensitive to who's up there. You don't play over them. You let them lead you. You don't lead them. And all that musical, that doesn't matter what genre it is. There are principles that apply to that are across the board. Those principles apply across the board. Yeah, So I mean, I'm sorry, but anyway, no room for ego.
We had a whole moment.
You said so much that was so powerful, but it's a great segue into understanding the culture of wherever your assignment is.
Which brings up my next question.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let y'all run with it, but you need to understand. So if I'm saying assignment because your assignment could be your work assignment. If you go to a new job, you have to find out, okay, well, who are the players? What is the culture of this place? Because if I'm in corporate America, which I was in a Fortune 500 company, they had one culture, and now I'm in the nonprofit sector, which is it was shell shock to me because I was like, oh, it was as far as the east is from the west.
Hear me?
So talk to us.
Yeah, I'm on a call.
Talk to him. He's on a call, y'all. He's on a call.
The Lord is amazing.
I hear you.
You might want to mute that, bro.
He's on a platform. Who's on the phone? Hi.
You know what though? Here's a question I'd like to ask.
Okay.
And you know, and it goes back to my dear brother's comments. Churches as a whole really put demands on musicians for reading hymnals. Okay, I think that's something, I don't know if it needs to be discussed at length or at least to be acknowledged. My father made me learn old songs, not out of a book, because he would just stand up and just, you know, look over to his son. You might not know this one. And I'm like, well, why are you singing it? No, you know, but I mean, the deal is, I think the thing is, you know, because a lot of people say you don't know no hymns. Well, you ain't singing them. You know what I mean?
But if it's the culture of the house, Mike,
right?
You know what I'm saying?
But I think, okay, well then the second part of that question is, what is the actual ratio of churches, modern churches, if I can use that term, that are actually opening up every Sunday morning service with a printed hymn?
I don't know the ratio, but I know.
Right. I mean, because and again, because the reason why I've asked it, because I've had this conversation on and on for the last couple of years. You know, people be, these young musicians don't know hymns. Well, y'all really ain't singing them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the deal is, culturally, you know, generationally, which is even a better word than culturally, you know, is the generation that sang hymns, that sang traditional gospel. Yeah. Nobody's really singing Mahalia Jackson recordings, James Cleveland recordings. You know what I'm saying? And we were joking before we went live, you know, with the praise and worship music that all sounds the same. Anyway, you know, what's the demand on musicians nowadays? What is the demand?
I want to take where you are and point it back to understanding the culture of where you are. Because now Tiff was in a different kind of church. They did something very untraditional. It was it like a jazz worship? Talk to us about that, Tiff.
So I've been a cantor at St. Paul and St. James in New Haven. It's an Episcopal church. It's called Jesus, Justice, and Jazz, or Jazz, Justice, and Jesus. No particular order. Jesus first, probably. And what I love so much about Jazz Eucharist is literally the church has a budget where they have hired a professional musician who happens to be a saxophone player to arrange all the music. Right. And so now I've been doing it for so long, I don't even need to rehearse. Like, I know all of the responses that we sing sort of with the jazz man, has a little jazz feel to it. The only thing that will shift is whatever I'm going to sing after communion or something, and then we'll rehearse. What I love so much about this is that all of the musicians in this band, well, yeah, they're all trained musicians, but they all had to learn how to play gospel. So when we would play gospel, that's when I would have a bigger role in saying, okay, can y'all give me grandma's tempo? Because that's too fast, right? You know what I mean? And then they look at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So then I would demonstrate what that was like in an a cappella way. And then they would follow along and like, oh, we're playing too much. Yeah, gospel. You don't need to play too many. You know, you don't need to, you know, that's jazz. That's a whole nother thing. Because my pianist, is really like dexterous. I mean, dude can play all these scales. And I'm like, but that's not gospel. You're overplaying. And now he realizes that playing gospel is more about call and response. So I've had a role even in helping them with what I grew up hearing. When it comes to other genres, I sit back and I listen and I'm learning from them. And then I started experimenting more with the jazz. See, my brand of jazz is what we use a lot at St. Paul St. James. Is I'm an Ellingtonian. Give me Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn, right? Duke Ellington sacred concerts,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Duke Ellington's, you know, because in those concerts, he has a suite also called Black, Brown, and Beige. And the recording actually of this particular piece, I think it was a recording from 1953. Mahalia Jackson sang "Come Sunday." Right? Which is my favorite tune by Duke Ellington, "Come Sunday." And I wish we would perform this music more in our churches because Duke wrote a whole like suite, Black, Brown, and Beige, of a whole bunch of sacred music.
Didn't you perform that at a cathedral in New York somewhere?
Yeah, they would do that. Yeah, at the St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think Duke recorded most of those concerts there.
Yes.
In order to hear this music, I have to go to an Episcopal church, right, to hear it. And I wish we would have that music happening more in our churches so that our kids can be exposed, right? Because as Dr. Lloyd said, you know, well, we're not playing hymns because ain't nobody singing them. Well, they need to hear them because one of the things I missed, I'm going to tell you, I had all the words wrong in a lot of those hymns. I had
Girl,
I was like,
I got stories.
Like when
Wow.
I was like, first of all, Tom Dorsey was a composer and he wrote Precious Lord for a particular reason.
Yeah.
Right? Something very personal to him, the reason he wrote that. And so when I learned that, I sang Precious Lord with a certain kind of like pride and hope and more than just in this downtrodden way, right? So I think if our kids had more exposure in our churches, grassroots exposure to people like Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn, who wanted to bring the Cotton Club to the church. I mean, that's what Duke said when he wrote those concerts. He wanted to bring the Cotton Club to the church house. Then I think our kids would appreciate this cross-pollination that seems to be a recurring theme in this talk. They're not exposed to it in a lot of the churches, especially in the inner city. They're not exposed to it.
It is so important. We actually do, and we pass it on to the next generation is learning it, so they know the hymns. Like it's like a part of our history. Like you definitely have to know it. We got a couple of comments. I want to go back to my point, and it's because it's so important, especially for people that service churches. Understanding, and only because I hear sometimes even seasoned musicians who have assignments at churches and they talk junk. And I'm like, but this is the point. You need to find out what the culture is of that house. What is the heart of the leader? Because everybody's, you got to find out. Like you just can't go and usurp yourself in your way. And people, and that's where this happens. You can't do what you want to do,
That speaks to the super ego thing, though. That whole super ego. So we kind of touched it a little bit, but we kind of really skated over that. That is the major problem.
Come on, sir.
I mean, I'm really enjoying all of what I'm hearing because there's such a plethora of what we've been talking about. You haven't really just been talking about church musicianship.
Yes.
We've been talking about musicianship and excellence as musicians, period.
Yeah.
Or as singing, period. We haven't even really dug into what the church culture is of music and some of the things that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation. But what happens is because somebody was talking about, is there any room for the super ego? I believe I saw that. And so while there is no room for super ego, number one, because as believers, first of all, and as Christians, in church, and yes, so we grew up in church, and sometimes even being a musician, you don't learn the essence of Christendom until you get a little older, until you go through some life experiences, and then you really realize how much you really need the Lord.
That's good.
So, you know, other than having somebody like Brother Lloyd said, that you're gonna learn tonight. It seemed like he had a couple of those experiences. You're gonna learn. You're gonna learn tonight, and you're gonna learn today how to do this. So you know, those experiences of learning culture in church. Every single church has a culture.
Yes.
It has a spiritual culture. Number one, there's a spiritual difference in it. You can go to different churches, and you ever. This is kind of funny, but I'm gonna put this out there. You ever go to a church and almost everybody in that church sounds the same, speaking in tongues?
Oh my, yeah.
You go to another church, and everybody in that church almost sounds the same, speaking in tongues. You know, there's like just this one slam, sha-na-na-na, and then so everybody in the church is, and you go to another church where it is something else, and it's so there's a culture that's underlying in every single environment that you go into. So as a musician, there's a culture within the church as well, with musicianship and even what's expected of the musicianship.
Yes.
And sometimes the pastors are sometimes setting the stage. They're the ones that are, here's the word again, indoctrinating even the musicianship within the church if they don't allow expression that comes from a spiritual place.
Human place too, right?
Yeah. You know, we have to allow that expression, because the reason why God brings us all together, every joint supplies for the making of the whole, by that which every joint supplies.
Yes.
Coming together and building one another up in love. So we're also, if God sends me to wherever, Timbuktu, guess what? He's sending me to Timbuktu to provide for Timbuktu that which he's placed in me to bring to enhance the service.
Yes.
For the first time that I grew up, I didn't grow up playing and thinking or even knowing anything about being a musician for hire. But I remember the first place that I got as a quote unquote gig at an AME church down in Harlem. I grew up in a 2,500 seat church anyway, playing every Sunday for a choir stand that had 200 members in the choir. So to me, that was normal. The Greater Refuge Temple down in Harlem, New York, Bishop William L. Bonner.
Yes, sir.
That's where I come from. So doing this was like, okay, this is what we do.
Right.
This is what we do, you know, and it was nothing for the pastor to now say with a full packed church on a Sunday morning to say he wants to pray for everybody in the church. And then so now after being at church from 10 to 11 for rehearsal, and then the service being from 11 to whatever, and then now the pastor wants to pray for the whole church. Now you're in church now from 2 o'clock until maybe 4:30, and we sat there and played.
Yes, sir.
And we sat there and played. There was no question. You might have got a break and ran to the bathroom and came right back. But that whole expectation, and I've experienced some cats, you know, as soon as they finish, they got their hand out waiting for their check and waiting to go. If the pastor sound like he's going over 5 minutes more than he normally does, they're showing frustration, don't want to play. I don't understand that mindset and that culture today. But growing up, there's some things that we had to learn, that we had to endure, that we had to go through. What God has placed in us, we are to bring to the table what God has empowered us to bring, to help, to teach, to help, to share. And the idea of where sometimes church musicianship is today, people feel like they've already arrived. They could play 3 or 4 chords and 2 chords. Listen. They're there, you know, and then so forget it if you're a little bit older than they are,
right?
You know, they definitely just want to make you feel like you're irrelevant to the whole situation. And
let me just say this,
so I rebel. Let me just say this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I reject, doctor. I reject. I'm using that word, and I don't accept. Like Dr. Lloyd says, I rebel against some things sometimes, and you know, it's unfortunate. I got into this place one time. I got into a funk where it's like, yo, that's how y'all want the song. You sure? It's like we can't really make the song our own or do anything. They want it to sound just like the record.
Like the record.
Yeah, I get that, but you know, I had to pray. I had to lay hands on myself. Lord help me.
But this is the thing. I mean, because one of the reasons why sometimes when you grew up in one of those big churches, and for those of us who haven't, a lot of times we become educated musicians and then we're playing at the Catholic churches and at the Episcopal churches, and that's okay. But our kids are not getting that exposure, right? So one of the things I do want to push back a little bit on is I like my check. I'm not going to even lie, because this student loan debt I have.
So Tiff, I'm going to ask everybody to come back, because that's the flip side of everything.
Yeah.
Now that is a part of professionalism, and no, I don't want to win either. I know, Varner, I get what you were saying. They got an attitude, they got to play over. I get that, but there's a whole nother conversation. So Tiff, I know exactly where you are. And I'm very happy that I don't deal with that. I'm very, that integrity's got to be on both sides. And honestly, there's so much to be said, because I always say there's something that I've learned. If you are playing or singing, or if you have an assignment with church, that type of work is totally different than secular work, because that money comes from tithers. So it's a whole different mindset, and we won't even go into that part of it. There's two things I wanted to touch on. I'm looking at the comment section as well. There is, I wanted to touch on when you said old, Varner, or irrelevant. Say it, girl. Say it. Irrelevant. I just want to share that there is, and I won't say old. I'll go with mature, seasoned, and experience.
Mm-hmm.
There is something, and if I've been watching a lot of the life stories of, there's so many on TV right now. Aretha Franklin,
Tina,
Billie Holiday, Tina. There's something in people's voices or their music that God gives us gifts. All of our gifts comes from God, but there is a payment. There is a payment. And what you hear in people's music is something that can't be purchased with money. What you hear from Colin, you're hearing Colin's experience. That's oozing out of him. It's oozing out of Mike. It's oozing out of Varner. It's oozing out of Tiff's voice.
It's oozing out of Rexy.
You can't pay for that. So, and I'm saying this for the next generation, like there has to be a common respect. And I believe we should, you got to work that whole generational thing out. But people, listen, I will put up if my grandmother were alive, if I needed to feel better, and we know a lot of people like that. Some people have a cracked voice, but if they start singing, you forget about it. Forget about it. So there's a common respect that has to happen. But that experience.
Let me jump in real quick.
Yes, sir.
It's gonna take 30 seconds. I was told one time when I was living in LA, I could not go on this particular tour if I didn't dye my hair. I said, I ain't going. I'm not going. You're not going to box in my years of experience, hard work, discipline, practice, and all that because you don't like the color of my hair. Right. Either I can play or I can't.
Exactly.
And so these are some of the things that once you get past a certain demographic that we got to deal with. Age. And and these are some of the things that I battle with, and maybe, with the time left, maybe we want to deal with that, maybe not. But I remember specifically, it's like, man, if you go on this tour, when I got ready to record my second jazz album, somebody said to me, you need to dye your hair. So for what?
I'm going to have you all come back. But there's two things that I just want to answer, if you will. I would love it. There's so much, and I believe this is so valuable. Brian Dennis was saying that he's wasted a lot of years.
Brian.
And I want to touch on that because it's never too late. I am now literally going back, doing my first works over.
Absolutely.
And it has its pros and cons. In one mindset, I'm saying, man, I should have got this when I was younger because I had more time. Now I got life happening and I have to make the sacrifice to get it in. But you know what? If that's my payment, so be it. Because I want it. Yes, sir. Talk about it, sir.
It makes you disciplined. Because
Yes.
by that time, you should have learned some lessons as we as we have matured and grown to this place in life.
Yes.
That now, okay, when you're younger, sometimes we're not disciplined like we need to be,
We're not.
and sometimes we need to be around people that
I
can
would.
guide us and make us and show us that you're going to do this. Like Mike, your father, you're going to do this. I'm locking you in.
Right.
I mean, as a kid, you want to be outside doing whatever, not
Exactly.
disciplined doing this and honing in on our craft. So it's never too late. I think the lessons that we've learned along the way would make us disciplined. There's things I do now that you talked about being at the church. There are things I do now, and you get away sometimes when you're teaching so much, you don't have time for yourself.
Mhm.
So when you're teaching at church, or you're playing for the choir, or you're doing this, there's times you just need time for you. And so I've gotten to that place where now, I take that time and not just learning material, but studying,
Yes, sir.
because there's always something you can learn. And
Absolutely.
this is why you never get to that place. So it's never too late to come back and say, listen, I'm coming back. I'm going to do this. And I'm doing this now for me because my heart is here and I'm focused now, as opposed to before. I don't have all these distractions. I know what to do with them now, So I think it's never too late.
It's never too late. I mean, look at Caleb. If we go to the Bible, at 80, he's saying,
80.
So, we listen to a lot of what society says. You're a woman, you can't do this, or you're this age, or you get those conversations. When you turn this age, this begins to happen. I'm like, I don't receive that from my life. No. So you can keep all of that.
And people can kill you, because what happens, I never forget this. When I got ready to go to college, person in my church said,
were they from Arkansas?
They probably were. Yes, they probably there, or Kansas City. If I think about it.
Same.
Yeah. I said,
Is this something going on here? Y'all need
I said, they said to me, what are you going to major in? And at the time, I wanted to go to law school, so I wanted to major in law and music. So don't major in music because you won't eat.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Now, see, this is the kind of mindset people,
ignorance.
They don't see your vision, what's in your heart. So what happens, they can derail you from where God is trying to take you if you listen to the negative.
If you listen. Yes,
Or
sir.
what about this one? When you gonna get a real job?
Yeah, fought against all of that. I've been put out. Well, I won't even say that, but I've been. No, I had to stand for a decision that I had to make, and after anyway, you have to stand for what you believe and what you know. One of the things that I share now when I talk to people who say, and they're a little bit older, and I'm teaching or sharing or whatever, one of the things I share with them is don't just learn to learn, but learn to appreciate what you're learning.
Oh my God.
Also appreciate what you bring to the table in your learning. Because
say that again, please. Say that
Professionalism.
again. Don't learn to be just to learn. Like somebody says, okay, well, I want to learn the piano now, and I'm this old. Okay, let's find out where you are, not just musically, but let's find out where you are mentally, emotionally, because learn to appreciate what you're learning, because you're also bringing something else to the table.
Wow.
In what you're learning, you're bringing an experience. So now when you're learning, learn to develop your own theory of even learning and teaching, because what a theory is just a formula to teach, so that someone else can say they learned it and be able to repeat it back to you, which proves that they've learned it, they've ingested it, they've now interpreted, and they now can share it with someone else. That's theory.
Wow.
That's theory. So you can develop your own technique of theory in your older age. You're bringing some appreciation to the table. You should now have this. You should have a philosophy. because of now with all of your years, now is when you start dropping the gems. Now is when you start dropping, the as they say, the whatever. You start dropping the wisdom. So you're not just showing a chord. Now you could tell somebody why they're playing that chord.
Right.
You could drop the knowledge to say, you know what, music consists of two things, maybe three. Music, you paid it already, right? So I know that's why. Music consists of two things, at least three. You know what they are? Sound,
yes, sir,
and silence,
Mm.
and then rhythm.
Mm.
Sound and silence, because no matter what note you play, it's a sound. That sound then, to cause you to anticipate the next sound, needs what? Silence.
Right. Space in between.
And if you take the sound and fit it into a rhythmic pattern and cause anticipation to come, I already feel you all already. Look at you. You got that excitement.
Right. And you touch other people. Yeah.
Right. When you combine that with an sing because I'm happy.
Yep.
I sing because I'm free.
Don't start nothing, sir.
His eye is on the sparrow, huh? Right?
Me, right.
Those were the anticipations and melodies of music that was birthed, like you said, the composer that wrote that song for a reason. So
that's
good. This is so good. This is so good. So I'm gonna go to the last one. Will y'all come back another time? I mean,
absolutely.
I could go on forever.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
So would like the panelists to answer. So after talent, what top 3 traits or qualities do they deem necessary?
Ooh.
Talk to us.
Humility.
Yes.
Social skills.
Yes. Yes.
All right, here's the last one. Financial management.
Yeah.
Those are my 3.
So humility. What was the other? Humility.
Social
skills.
And financial management. How to
I'm
treat
going
people.
to break that down to the common denominator. So
Financial
humility.
competency.
Talk to me. Humility.
Sure. Well, humility. Go back to other things. There's no need for ego.
Okay.
There's just no need for it. No matter what generation you're at, what keeps me humble is when I see there's 2 kids. Well, there's this kid who's from South Africa, moved to Detroit, and now live in North Carolina. Little fella named Justin Lee Schultz. He might be all of 14 now. He is playing like a grown man. Every time I think I can play, I go watch this kid. Okay.
Yep.
When we were coming up, in Connecticut, it was always, you would find a bunch of us together. Me, Colin, what's the other homie? Barham and other cats. Melvin Barham and Bridgeport. It was me, Reggie Stewart, Tim Owens, Eric Lord. It was just, we was all at each other's anniversaries. We were all each other's musicals. And the thing, we walked in, what y'all singing? Because we don't want to sing the same thing. Or, hey, my drummer's not here. Come play with me. Hey, man, play organ with me. That's kind of thing. We grew up with this camaraderie.
Right.
Wasn't 15 dudes standing over you with a cell phone because you're trying to get points. That wasn't there. So there has to be this humility that leads to social skills. I don't care how good you can play. Nobody wants to fool with a jerk.
Listen, stop right there. And I said this before when Tiff was on, because Tiff is known as necessary diva. She has been deemed as necessary diva. Hold on, and I'm gonna tell you why. Hold on.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
So this is discipline. All right.
Oh, Lord.
Necessary diva. All right. So my comment.
Really?
Yeah.
We have a couple things we need to talk about, Dr. Tiffany.
All right.
Again, muscle. Yeah.
She takes on clients. She takes clients. Fitness is her thing. That's another thing. I told Tiffany that the word diva has taken on a total negative thing for me because I don't want you to call me diva because a lot of times because people may be able to sing or they're snobbish or they're stuck up, you know, they're like, oh, she's just a diva. No, she's just stank, you know. So that it just that's that whole thing where I'm better than you. And like you said, Colin, you know, God didn't give it after Lucifer. He didn't give it. He didn't give it to people like that. And you know, there's so many people that walk around with their noses up as though they're better than someone else. But God's got 100,000 people that we know not of who can do it so far greater. Point in case, I was in Maryland years ago in the inside flea market. It was my first time, so I'm looking around like a tourist. All of a sudden, I hear somebody singing, and it captivated me, and I stopped. It was a homeless woman. I mean, looking tore up, but her voice, I was like, oh my! She would put anybody out there in mainstream to shame. So nobody has a monopoly on anything. You know, the mere fact that God graced any of us with anything, we should really. We should be so grateful. We should be so grateful.
That's what I think humility is. So I want to name my three. So
sure, please.
I actually think humility means having a sense of gratitude, right? Because we all have a measure of ego, but I wrote, we all have an ego. The key is, do we use it to empower or to shrink others?
Wow. Wow.
Right? Because Jesus was no joke.
He was not.
He was a rebel. I mean, he went to the church and straight like turned the tables over and like, you know, and his mission was to die, was to be killed, was to be crucified, was to be publicly lynched and beaten, spat upon. He knew that was coming even as he was walking through his life and journey, and all the while still standing up to the Sadducees and Pharisees and saying, y'all might have all these smarts and things, but it's not benefiting people. It's only benefiting you, right? So the thing is, I think Jesus had a sense of knowing why he was who he was, right? But he used it for good. So I just want to say that we're all necessary. No, we're all divas. I say to my women, my friends, but are you necessary, right? Right. Otherwise, if what you are endued with, right, what you are endowed with is only serving your purpose, then that's when I think that's an ego gone bad, right? So gift, passion, purpose are the three organizing principles of my life, and it is the name of my nonprofit. My gift is my spiritual endowment. So I think people need to be aware first of what is their gift, what is their spiritual endowment, what was it that was given to them that was of no consequence of their own, and discovering what that is. So the discovery of the gift, passion, fueling your passion. I'm not passionate about music or singing. I am. That's different. I am music, right? It's different. I embody music, right? As a natural bodybuilder and nutrition specialist, it's my passion, because I realized to be healthy in my body meant to be healthy in my spirit. And when I made that connection, like, wow, when I'm healthy, I feel closer to God, right? I have more clarity of mind.
First the natural, then the spiritual. So that
exactly. We are spiritual beings having a physical.
Cool. Yep, absolutely.
Right? So for me, passion is something you have to constantly fuel. So whatever it is that people are passionate about, they have to fuel. So you have to stay on that path. With fitness, I can never take my eye off the ball, because it's always somewhere where I'm like, okay, where that piece of fried chicken at? Where is that? Where's that? So it's a constant walk. I need to have something I'm passionate about to constantly keep me chipping away at this thing is not given. This thing I have to get, right? Yeah. Purpose. I think people have to know, what is your purpose? If you don't know it now, you'll learn it eventually. I thought my gift was my purpose. So if I didn't sing at a certain place at a certain time, I felt like, well, now God, I thought I was a singer. If I didn't sing at the Met by a certain time or year, then I'm a failure. But what the Lord showed me one day, and it was actually when I went to South Africa years ago with Oprah Winfrey. I'm going to make this real quick. She gave us these journals And on the first page, it said, Tiffany, you're going to love this beloved country beyond any singing of it. And I was like, what's beyond singing, Oprah? Because at 30 years old, there was nothing I could deem was more important, because my entire identity was built around my gift. And the Lord started to say, no. Your gift makes room for you. It's not a purpose.
For you. Yeah.
Right. It makes room for you. But
Absolutely.
once you get to where you're going, now you need to find purpose in that.
Your philosophy.
And your philosophy, yes, bro. You find your why. Exactly. It's the same thing. We use different terminology, but it's exactly the same thing. And when you find your why, if it does not include common good or sharing or imparting, like Maya Angelou said, when you learn, teach. When you get to that part in your life, which I think we're all at that space in our lives, that's when you can drop gems.
Right.
So those are the three things: gift, passion, and purpose. Those are my three. And it keeps me grounded and centered. And it keeps me keeps me away from my carnality a lot easier. Believe it or not, this health and fitness thing is something that has made me live a more holy life than I ever have before. It's strange. But I thought if I pray more and go to church more, then I'll feel closer to God. What made me feel closer to God was being disciplined.
Yes, ma'am. But understand, you know what? That's powerful right there, because we know people that have been in church all their lives, and but our faith is our discipline. It's just that we don't embrace the discipline. So I can totally understand how discipline would be the spiritual part of it. Because first the natural, if I can do it with my flesh, then my spirit's going to follow.
Yes. We do it the opposite way, but it doesn't always work that way, to find spirit and then find no. Sometimes we have to fight the flesh, like Jesus had to do that. He had to die. He had to die first. Like, we got to die to ourselves. So for me, health and fitness and nutrition and being healthy in my body is what helped me to become much closer to God. So those are my three things that I would recommend for people to ask themselves and explore.
That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
I think that I think it's, you have to love yourself.
That's powerful, Colin.
You have to love yourself, because if you love yourself, you're going to love the person that you don't know.
And your neighbor is that self.
That's the ego.
Exactly. You know exactly. If you love yourself, you have time for you love yourself. Do unto others. Then it'll keep your ego down, because you know what happens is, when I see somebody living under a bridge, I say that could be me.
Or an angel.
I could be me, and the people I work with people that our motto is to end homelessness one person at a time. And when I see and I drive, and I'm going back before I even took this job in social work. I saw this. I would driving over, getting on the highway over near State Street, and I would see people living up under the bridge in the wintertime, underneath the overpass. They're living under there. And my heart would go out to those people. I would say, praying like, God, if I had the means that I could take people off the street and put them in a place and put them there so they could live and not pay a thing, that's what I would do, because it's in the love for not wanting to see, the love for people, and you don't want to see people hurting like that. When you do that, you see yourself. That'll keep you humble, because you could listen. It could be me.
One event. One event can change your entire life.
Just one.
Just one. I mean, and when I think about that, I had an experience when I was a child. I went with our church to a cookout up to Ocean Beach. I never forget this. I was 10 years old. And there was one of the brothers in our church that was a great swimmer. They were at the pool. He was in the pool. Tanya's father, Tanya Rick's father.
Well, Tanya, right?
Yeah, he was one of the members of the church, and I was so impressed. I didn't know how to swim, but I was just standing there, sitting there at the pool watching him. And a friend, I called him a friend at that time, pushed me in the deep end.
Wow.
And at 10 years old, your life that you've lived flashed right before me. And when I realized where I was sitting on the bottom of the pool in the deep end. Couldn't swim. Jesus. And all I remembered, and I know this was God that just says, do this. And I just remember just doing like this and pedaling, coming up. And God was lifting me. I literally lifting myself coming out of the water. Nobody jumped in there to save me. I could not swim. And I came up out of the water, and I was able to look around, but then I saw a lifeguard reaching out, and what I did, and nobody jumped in the pool, and I saw myself moving toward the edge of the pool on my own. No one jumped in. So that was God. But that said to me, when I look back at that, I see to myself that,
Purpose?
God kept me here for a reason.
And that's an Olympic-sized pool, just so you know.
And I came up out of there. So, and I look at that I live by that even from that point to this day. That God kept me here. So I need to love and express that to other people. When I do that, it keeps you humble, because it could have been a different thing. My parents could have been burying me, and at that age. So I think that your experiences should keep you humble, and especially the fact that you see a person, whether they're in need or not, but you love people because they're all God's creation. And then that'll carry over to what you do in your life. When you trust to teach someone, you'll teach me. I taught people and never charged them a dime. Because I wanted what God gave me, I wanted to impart to them. Because you know what good is it in the grave?
And this is the thing, and let me tell you, because I'm one of those people, and I know other people, and even the younger ones, that means your name will forever be in the earth. So you live on. You live on. When you close your eyes, you live on because you have made those deposits. And that's amazing right there.
It's beautiful.
One of the big things for me is purpose. I remember having an experience one time. I was driving by a graveyard, and I kind of, you think you see something, you do a double take, and I heard this in my ear. I heard, "Dreams never die."
That's true.
And then an entire scenario played through in my mind. I have a dream. So when you hear that, automatically you think of who? Martin Luther King. But even though the man died, his dream is yet alive. And then I saw the reverse. I saw dreams sitting on the tombstones that had been unrealized. Reclaimed, because though people died, their dream died with them. But when dreams are realized, when purpose is realized, dreams never die, just the people do. Dream lives on in the earth. And then I said, well, what happens then? What happens? Why is it that people never realize their dreams? And the Lord said to me, simple, life happens. Life gets in the way. People get married, they have children, people get sick, they get stuck in the routine of get the check, pay the bill, get the check, pay the bill. And then they say, one day when I have time, I'll do what I really want to do. And they may never reach that because they were too afraid to take the chance to step out beyond their circumstances to realize their dream. Some people cannot push past their immediate circumstances to take a chance. So, there's a scripture that says, when the Lord returns, will he find faith in the earth? Reverend. Sometimes we get stuck on the routine, and you know what the difference is between a routine in a grave, a rut in a grave is 6 feet. Because when you keep going around the same thing, you just start digging your own grave when you get stuck. If you don't learn how to break beyond what is the border of whatever it's society or an industry or whatever says, we don't do this past that. But there are always exceptions when they go beyond what they said. Well, this is what the industry looks for, because there's always an exception that is the exact opposite of what they said.
Wow. Right.
Mhm.
There's something that we do to ourselves. We put this expectation on ourselves, even as musicians and singers in our culture, because we look for this excellence in singing. And I say, but guess what? And I'm sorry, but white folk don't do that to themselves. You turn on some of the country music, pop music, and then people cannot sing, okay? But their records are selling more than some of our who people can do, and they do all the riffs and whatever, but you put on somebody else's record and they are just about as happy as they want to be.
But see, that's what it goes back to. Talent is not enough. So what is it that we have to do when we have all this extra talent? Is a lot of what we're talking about right now. Talent is just one part of it. And as Black people, we have all this talent, but sometimes, like when you were talking, I was just getting all kind of like, oh my goodness. It was just, I was thinking of a fruit that doesn't fully burgeon, like an orange that doesn't come to its maturity. And what do they do to those oranges in the orchard? They generally like throw them away, or they'll send them to some place in the inner city and give them the bad oranges or whatever.
Yeah.
Undeveloped, unrealized energy. Can you imagine how many of our people that has happened to? When you think about the cost of the transatlantic slave trade, when you think about enslaved folk, what happened to them, to our parents, our parents' parents, like that's why it's really important for us to make sure that we break those intergenerational things and curses with every aspect of our being, not just with our professionalisms, but with our life, with our health, with our strength, so that our kids, it always to me goes back to the kids who are watching us. These generations are suffering because I don't think we do enough, or not enough of people out there are doing what we do. Either way, we learn from what we see. So our kids are representation of what it is they're getting or not. And I'm a little afraid of, are they not going to reach their full potential? Because those are the things that break the yoke. You know what I mean? When you see something that has been fully realized and how that inspires other people to do the same.
Right.
So I'm just so excited about this conversation. I can't wait till we have our next conversation.
And we got to wrap it up. This is the longest I've ever gone. But I have to say, to Coleman said about his work, one person at a time. So I honestly believe there's 5 people on here. I believe if we pour into somebody, that reach will go farther and farther and farther. I just have to believe that. I have to believe that. And that's really in my maturity right now. That's my purpose, is I've got to get some of what may have been lost in generations into the next generation. There's some stuff that has been poured into you guys. There's some stuff that has been poured into me from older generations. So bridging the gap and just pouring in is so necessary, because if we don't do it, we can't trust somebody else to do it for us. We've got to make it happen. And I believe we will inspire somebody else to pick up a mantle or a baton.
We have to appreciate each other.
Yeah. Well, it's all about collaboration. There's such a wealth of knowledge on here right now. I so appreciate every one of you. I will find a date and make certain that we can do this again.
Please.
I was thinking about like around Juneteenth, because it's centered around music, and there's so much to talk about. Okay. So I'll find a date and I'll get with you guys. Let me just say,
and maybe by then I'll have something that.
Come on, sir. Come on, sir.
We were talking about our history.
Wow.
This is what I've been doing and dealing with, because I'm teaching this to our young people, because this is the shoulders that we're standing on.
That's it.
These are the shoulders, and there's so many songs in here that tell the story.
You write that down.
Right.
Religious and secular. Love it. Some of
So
those spirituals weren't religious at all. They was having conversations. It's a lot of
exactly,
implicit
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna come do this Juneteenth thing, guys. I'm gonna say thank you, Dr. Mike. I know you got a class to teach.
That's right.
Colin, thank you for your time. I love you, man, so much.
Love
From
you
the
too.
best places of my heart, and I'm so glad we are connected from childhood and still here. Garner, love you. Tiff, you my sis for life. I love you all so much. I'm looking at the comments, so there are thank yous in the comments. This has been effective. It's been good for me, but I know it wasn't just for me. It was for other folks too. I have been enlightened and I have learned today. Thank you all so much. And until next time, I'll talk to you real soon because we're going to lock that day in and push it. And I will also like to talk to you about some more stuff because there's so much that we can do. So I have some ideas. So I'll definitely get in touch with everybody. Love you guys.
It was great to meet y'all. Y'all fabulous.
Thank you. I need your information.
Okay. All right.
So I'm gonna put you guys backstage. You can keep talking. I'm gonna put you backstage.
Okay.
All right?
We can talk to each other backstage.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. Thank you guys. Love you all.
Okay.
You too.
So to all of my viewers, I hope something that was said has inspired you. I'm looking at the comments. I see that it has. There is something that everybody can do. We can all continue to evolve. And I know this was centered around music. This was centered around musicians and singers, but it's the principle of the thing. Whatever your gift is, whatever your talent is, whatever your ability is, that is really what we wanted to touch today. It's never too late. That's just some of the things we've been hearing. I have gone back now to put the good stuff, the foundation with what I already know. So I'm putting the theory and the notes with my ear training and causing it to collide to make a definite difference for me and also to be masterful. These guys are amazing. Like, this is so good. I wish I could do this every week with them, but there's so much that we can learn from this. So again, this is While We Wait. You are so welcome. You are so very welcome. You're so very welcome. Everyone, you're so welcome. You are so welcome. And then if there are things that you all are interested in, even centered around this conversation, I will make certain that comes out in the next time that we meet. I'm very open to people giving me suggestions for topics. If there's anything you want, I will find someone that specializes and get them on While We Wait, because that's what it's about: being strong, being wise, and enhancing your life. Show up next week, which is the 22nd of April. I will have a returning guest, Lisa Zarotny, and this is so good. Right after this talk, Lisa Zarotny will be coming on talking about unstuck, getting out of your own way. So if you feel discouraged because you didn't get your giftings are undeveloped, or if you feel like you didn't really get everything you needed and you're discouraged, listen, reinforce what you got today with this topic on next week, right here on While We Wait. All right, guys, you know the spill. Be strong, be wise, keep enhancing your life, because life is worth living. We're all waiting for something while we wait. I'm Arbitrice Bryant. Have a great and wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
I stay wise. I let the hands with I stay strong. I stay wise. I let